Yeah, well, hey, uh, welcome to this episode of Ink and Thinking. In previous videos, not necessarily in this series, but I've been talking a lot about inking over the likes of John Buscema. I've taken a lot of the graphite, the pencil images in that book, and I decided, man, wouldn't it be fun to take those pencil pages and ink over them? And that's what I've been doing. And they, in a way, they used to say that, some would say that inking was more like a glorified tracer, that kind of thing, right? Um, I used to think that too. Uh, but later, my education kind of opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of these guys were artists themselves, and quite good, I might add you, in their field of doing other artwork. But for me, I just thought it would be a great idea to go in there and ink over Big John Buscema. Um, you know, being so inspired by this book. But enough of that book. I just wanted to mention something about this, though. Oh, by the way, what you're looking at there is the original inks for that thing picture from the book. But I just want to mention something here. In general, when it comes to inking, it also reminds me of something else that I've touched upon only in recent years, not knowing these things during my artistic development. The implement of referencing that went on in comic book art. That there was a lot of light boxing incorporated into work, and at sometimes tracing images, that sort of thing, real referencing. And lately, I started to question that, but then I started thinking, wait a minute, maybe I'm missing something here. And I certainly was. And to explain all that, I don't quite have the eloquence to do that right now, or the inclination. But I will say this, that my work has always been like most of the main pictures that I'm showing in the like on the board series, or you know the previous videos, those are like, those are non-referenced images. And some of the work turned out quite well. They were just rough sketches that I bring up into the modern times and tweak them and adjust them and bring those images up to their potential. Try to restore what was intended. So it's not really, I mean, a lot of those sketches that you're seeing, that's unreferenced work. I'm not looking at anything. I mean, it's not even, most of it, excuse me, isn't even freehand referencing, if you know what I mean, without tracing. It's not even that. It's just from imagination. You get to a certain point where that starts to happen, right? Where you can just render a figure and stuff. Like, you can do it, but you can't, I guess depending on your level of expertise, you can't always do that. Like, not every sketch you make is going to be a winner, so to speak, right? A lot of crumpling of pages and stuff for a lot of people. I'm a hoarder. I tended to save a lot of my old sketches and slush piles of drawings and stuff over the years. But no, never been much of a reference artist or a tracer. But lately, I've been really dabbling with these ideas of referencing, and I realize that as I try to apply it and try to do it, I realize I don't know anything about it. That it's a bit of an art in itself. You wouldn't believe it. It's like some artists would tell you. I've heard it said that it can be labor intensive, and the truth is you're better off just drawing the things freehand right away anyway, instead of instead of rendering someone else's art or trying to recreate an image you already see by whatever means, right? If you're light boxing or tracing something, I don't have a light box, right? But that sort of thing, you're better off just drawing it yourself. As far as time goes, like Ralph Bakshi was saying something like that concerning the topic that came up in one of his interviews concerning rotoscope. One of the thoughts he had on recreating things or using previous work to bring up your anime, that you're better off just drawing it, redrawing it. You'll save a lot of time. But anyhow, moving on from there, since we're on the topic of inking, and that's what this episode is about, I want to bring another book into focus that I got under my nose, I don't know, say 23, 24 years ago. And that's this one. It's Volume 2 of The Art of Comic Book Inking by Gary Martin. And a lot of people will remember him from his work on Ghost, right? And I was fascinated with working on Ghost at around 2002. In fact, I did an 8-page story that Dark Horse was providing. I heard about it in a Wizard magazine, and I completed that. I penciled, I photocopied my pencils, and then I inked my pencils, and then sent them both in. And, I bring them to Comic-Cons for other people to look at, other artists, and tell me, hey, can you give me any pointers, that kind of thing. But the point about this is exactly what this book is, okay? It's, it's someone that's worked in the business that basically wanted to tell you all about the art of inking, right? And that subject, that thing, that skill that is now considered obsolete due to the digital age. And I don't know, you're going to find a lot of different opinions concerning that. But what you have are 4 examples of penciled work, right? Here's one of them. That's one of my favorites. Beautiful rendition of Ghost here. And it shows 4 artists inking over those pencils. If you get my meaning, right? 4 different inking artists inking over that work. And you'll see there is a great difference between the 4. And then after you get to the 4, you get another penciled image that is followed by the inked version of 4 different artists again. And they're all different, folks. So, their styles do shine through. But here's another one, right? And what the book provides you with, even a cartoony version, I don't know who the artist was there, with the inks being rendered. But anyway, what the book provides you with are actual, what is that, 11 and a half by 17s? You can see the, I wouldn't call them blue penciled, but it's blue work, so it won't come up on a photocopier, right? And the actual pages that are inside, you're given so that you can test your hand at the inking and ink over them, right? And you can see I've already started on these. Funny, like, I didn't complete one of them. I'd start in and then lose interest or just walk away from it. Here, too, you can see where I'm kind of using the Manili approach again. Thin lines and then putting in those darker blacks, right? But, yeah, that's what it is. The reason I'm pointing this out is that this is a rather older book, and if this stuff is actually, and these images are actually, this one it says Anderson 01, but the reason I'm showing this is because the book is rather old, and this art may be dying off. Well, not as long as I live and breathe, and I'm sure there's other line of work artists that feel the same way about it. and some don't. There's different attitudes out there, and for different reasons too. I heard Todd McFarlane explain something in an interview where he was saying how he understands why the artists resent the new tools that people are working with today. And he explained the caveman thing, where the caveman said, back in my day we had to use our bare hands to fight a tiger. And then then the next generation says, back in my day we had to use look at him with his spear. We used to have to use a rock, and so on and so forth, right? The harder it was, the more they begrudge the new technology. I see that. There is that spirit within just generation to generation, but I think there's a bit more to it than that, Todd. I'm sorry. Let's be honest with one another. It also depends on the artist, right? Right? If you want to blow up 400 times to get in there with the ink, more power to you. Some people were more about the squiggly, useless lines in the work. Not too much going on there, but hey, look at all that lines. But no, it as a tool, certainly it made Todd's work a lot crisper. No, Todd's great. Don't get me wrong. No one can draw like Todd. Actually, there are a few now. He kind of trained them up for that now, but no, you know what I mean. He's the Godfather. He's the Todd father. But opinions about that do vary. You're going to find there's other artists who will say, like Rubinstein joked, he said, I still use 13th century technology, where he talks about this black stuff in a bottle and a brush and a pen, or, it varies. But it is, it does say something about how much skill is going to be required to do these things. I mean, it doesn't mean just because you have the technology you're going to be able to become this great artist or be this great artist. I think it can be argued the AI thing working in that direction. But anyway, what I wanted to mention about this is actually it's a segue to a story that I'll have to tell sometime about this period of time when I was displaying the ghost work that I actually did. Not this stuff. This was practice stuff, but the ghost work that I actually did and during a Comic-Con and my local comic shop at the time. And it was a story of bitter envy and just geek evil. I don't know how to describe it. Some of the people, you wouldn't believe... I think some people know about this, but you wouldn't believe some of the envy and maliciousness amongst some of the geeky artists, right? All I did was present my work, and this one guy who always seemed to be a pretty decent dude, anyway, just became a rancid, insulting... He was wounded by a talent, offended, became deeply offensive. Unbelievable psychological condition, just being confronted by another artist. But there's a lot of it about. And I remember I had gone in with these not too long ago, less than a year ago, to get copies of these four. So that my idea was that even if I inked these out to completion, I'd still have copies to re-ink them and do it again, sort of thing. And I got the copies just over there, actually. But I had brought these in my plastic sleeve portfolio, and I just shoved them in there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was flipping through it. There was a clerk there who worked at it was a office supply depot place, right, where I sometimes go to get my photocopies, blow things up, shrink things down, move things around, try different things, experiment, whatever. I'm still going old school, folks, so whatever. Anyway, And he came over and he saw these things sitting in there. He said, I see, you really, and then he stops and he's looking at these now, folks, right? He's looking at these pages that came out of the book that was designed for people to ink over. And I remember he had a conversation with me. He goes, well, I notice you're using prints. Are you tracing and all this stuff? And I said, what do you think? What are you saying, right? See, in his mind, it was like it was an excuse to accuse me of being a tracer. These pages are made for inking, right? I was kind of in a rush. I didn't go into explaining what this was and stuff. And I don't know, sometimes it's hard for me to just say, let people think what they want to think. But yeah, these, in case people didn't know, when they see these blue ink things, yeah, they're designed for inking, for people to take your black inks with your pens and your brushes and fine liners and all that and ink over them. But yeah. But I just wanted to mention, Gary's book and recognize him as one of the greats that might not be familiar with a lot of people viewing such artists, strictly through DC and Marvel Comics, but Brent Anderson too. Okay. Here's a list of these inking artists actually. Brent Anderson, Terry Dodson, Mike Royer, right? Mike Royer, right? Steve Lealoha, is that? Lealoha, is that right? I don't know. Michael Bear, Alex Garner, Rachel Dodson, Carl Kessel, Al Gordon, Hilary Barta, Adam Warren, and Randy Green, right? Those are all of the artists featured in this book. It's not, I haven't seen part one. Perhaps someone out there has part one or whatever. But, I found it interesting and it gave me something to think about while, like while I was inking my own work for the Ghost supplement thing that Dark Horse was providing for new talent, for trials and that sort of thing. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. And I don't know. It's weird. I'm sometimes curious about how people feel about this, the inking process being completely replaced, by digitizing, right? That would be an entire other video altogether, and certainly a conversation amongst people being asked the question. But, as far as I'm concerned, I still believe that, and I've seen it with young kids, like with my nephews, the way they, my mom, their grandmother, was noticing how the one boy would just ogle over this kind of art that I would do. I mean, when it comes to that kind of comic book art, the flat colors, bold outline images still appeal to the kids. Okay? I know the comic book geeks are going to get mad when we start talking about kids and comics. They don't like that, right? I get it. But what I'm saying is, my particular taste, like a lot of times when I'm looking at these things, these images, it takes me back to my childhood, and that was Bronze era stuff that I was looking at. And what was important to me was, rendering, a certain degree of realism in shape and form, right? But at the same time, not straying too far from the tradition of an inked image being transferred or copied with somewhat flat colors over there. Big, bold colors. I would put it this way. It's cartoony. More cartoony, but not cartoony in the sense of the word. We don't use that word in the same sense today. Today, when we say cartoony, we mean it means something else. It means that the proportions are wonky or the faces don't look realistic and that sort of stuff. Cartoony, right? The way the body is disproportionate. You know, you could still go in it with elaborate colors, make it even look like an oil painting, but that's what cartoony means today when the form is wonky and stuff. But when I say cartoony, I mean it in the actual conventional sense, right? Michelangelo used cartoons. Capiche? The idea of a cartoon was applied on the frescoes that he would paint on the Sistine Chapel, right? You'd have an outline, you do your rough sketches, your preliminary drawings and all that, and then you do a rough sketch and dot out the outline of the figures, right? Remember, poke through the paper. They'd use charcoal dust all around it so that you could take that piece of paper, push it up against the wet plaster, pull back the paper, and you'd have that black outline all around it. And they called them cartoons. Michelangelo, folks. I mean, the traditional sense of the word cartoon. Yeah, almost like coloring book quality. You know, but that can vary. You can have them goofy, cartoony looking figures, or you can have them realistic. Look, I'm looking at the thing, right? Talking about realism. I think you know what I mean when I say realistic. If I use words or names like Neil Adams, you know right away what I mean by realistic. You know, he often had the word photorealism attached to his name, right? Proper proportions, proper anatomy, etc., etc. But still, and as much as I love the coloring that's going into the modern work, I still think keeping it simple is amazing. It has there's something I realized, and there's a reference I'd like to show here while we're on it. This is about just showing, mentioning something about Gary Martin's book, but while I'm at it, I might as well mention something else. Now, folks, I've often mentioned that when I was a kid, 9, 10, learning to draw, I wasn't interested in Kirby's work at all. Now, it's important to remember that as well as Big John Buscema was famous for his anatomy and his work on Conan the Barbarian, that sort of thing, he tried to emulate Kirby's work in his early days at Marvel. For professional reasons, but he said he learned so much and he'd go on and on about it, which is very strange since he really, on the other hand, showed a real disdain for superhero work and all that. But what I want to tell you is this, that although I didn't like it that much, and although at the time when things like this were out, I had no interest in this character or too much of Kirby's work, okay? I thought his stuff was wonky and all that. But recently I've gone back to these issues and checked them out and just read them cover to cover. And I'm telling you, there's a formula there. And we're talking, like, by this time, we're talking about 1978, when Kirby has returned to Marvel. And there's a simplicity there, that it's perfect. They're perfect stories for the kid that age. I'm telling you. And the imagery and the action is all there. It's a formula that just doesn't fail. So, I don't know. In the final analysis, what can I say? There are things going on with the cartoon work. in a simpler form that still work. That still work. But it's interesting. I was talking to a kid not too long ago who was saying he reads, listen to this, he doesn't like comic books, he says. He goes, I prefer graphic novels. Are you getting that, folks? Like, it's getting to the point where the artwork and the coloring process has become so advanced that there's, well, it's fair enough to say there's a distinction between something like this cartoon work and the over elaborate oil painting like coloring work that's coming from the digital aids and age, right? And he sees a distinction there, like they're two different things. And I didn't have the heart to tell him that, do you understand that graphic novels were born out of comic books? And that a lot of those first graphic novels had more of an appearance like so, like the Jim Starlin Death of Captain Marvel, you know, that sort of thing. And the things that would follow. I remember, I still have it actually, back in the collection there. The Wolverine 1-4 limited series from the early 80s put into a graphic novel form where they combine them all. You know, I'm getting around to telling, by the way, kid, see this thing you're reading here? Yeah, these were actually 5 separate issues, that sort of thing. They don't even know, right? So things are definitely changing. But I don't know. I think a lot can be said for that simplicity. But that inking note about accusations of tracing and stuff, and oh, you're a tracer or whatever. I didn't care much about it because I was never that, right? I was more of a, I was more of a pencil artist and later a painter, I mean, I went right into, the inking thing, and the referencing thing is kind of new to me now, but it's going to sound strange, but I'm having fun doing it. Like, especially when you're taking the time to ink over one of the artists that you actually admired, right? Oh, and there's so many, I have so many, but, it makes sense, but when those things are put into question, it leads to other thoughts concerning this field of comic book art and history and development. Anyway, opinions will vary. Opinions will vary concerning these new processes. I can already tell you one thing just off the top of my head that I'm sick of with the computer art is that I'm sick of that milk-like streaming they use for light glows, like the glow of headlights from a car or the glow of some burst of energy. It's like a milk film. It just looks like milk poured over the page, over the, it's a hazy milk, white color, and it's just, I don't know. I see it so much now that it's just annoying. But then again, I remember when the 3 follow-up Star Wars movies came after the original 3. And I remember, the advent of CGI, looking at these images and thinking, wow, this stuff's really incredible when you look at it. It's so fluid and it looks real. But it didn't quite. It kind of had like an oil painting look to it, no matter how it flowed. Whereas like a puppet or Muppet of Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back, it didn't look as convincing, but you still bought it in the sense that you knew it was a physical object you could reach out and touch. You know what I mean? Opinions are always going to vary on that sort of thing. I can understand how when it comes to the inking process, someone would value the idea of being able to blow up something much larger on their screen so they can get into fine detail. Because, that's the idea. As you reduce the image, it gives a sharper image. But I think most people that are doing it know that it can only go so far. You know, the naked eye can only, you don't have to get that extreme and indulgent. And now a lot of the pros are getting to the point where they have to basically tell themselves not to go higher than a certain level of detail because, it's pointless or whatever. Well, because it's about time and money, right? And you want to be efficient and you want beautiful images, but you don't want to be wasting time. But anyway, I'm sure a lot of different people out there have different opinions about it. Mine are still forming, and I'm getting new attitudes as I'm looking back to the people that were referencing mechanical things and vehicles and planes and stuff like that. Guys like the great Wally Wood and Gray Morrow, and I'm looking at referencing a lot different now. I realize there's a lot of work involved. Guys like Gene Day, for example, I mean, the stuff looks great for a reason. And I would say to the naysayers out there that haven't tried it, that I'd say if you think you can do it, and you think it's just a matter of them referencing or tracing, you try it and see what you come up with. Like that's something Ed Pisker used to say. Before you start talking shit, know what you're talking about. This is like when gallery days. I remember going in and people being wondering about anatomy. Oh, maybe you could teach anatomy. And how'd you learn to do? I did. It's almost like you don't have the heart to tell them. Well, my social or my artsy fartsy butterflies. I don't want to break your hearts by telling you that most of this stuff was learned when I was a kid reading comic books. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.